Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
Welcome to the 8th season of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. We're happy to be back after a year off for the pandemic. We've got a great group of guests scheduled for you this year and a great group of sponsors helping us bring the show to you. On this week's episode, we'll visit with Stephen Waguespack. He's the president and CEO of the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, and we'll be right back on the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Louisiana businesses, by partnering with your local community and technical college foundation, you're guaranteed a skilled, highly competent workforce, homegrown talent, trained specifically to meet your needs, whatever those needs are. Visit this website to learn more about how to partner with your local Louisiana Community and Technical College Foundation. To better prepare for tomorrow, become a partner today.
Today we're in Lafourche Parish, Louisiana, where we're building terraces along the Hurricane LABI system. These terraces will provide shoreline protection in the marsh, which will protect homes and businesses in South Louisiana.
So our terracing projects is a great partnership with industry to prove that we can help the environment and protect our levee system. Without investments from the industry and companies like Chevron, projects like this would not be possible.
In Louisiana, oil and gas and the community are all connected.
Industry partners help Ducks Unlimited do what we do best, protect South Louisiana.
Before you hire someone to work on your home or business, protect yourself. Go to lacontractor.org and make sure he or she is licensed in Louisiana. That's lacontractor.org for a list of over 26,000 licensed contractors. It's your money. Make wise decisions and protect yourself. Protect yourself from the headaches of dealing with a non-licensed contractor. Go to lacontractor.org and make sure the person or company who wants to work for you is licensed by the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. It's your money. Make wise decisions and protect yourself.
For 8 seconds in the arena before an afternoon in the field. For a promise to students that honors success in the classroom. For championships earned on the bayou. For innovators committed to reclaiming our coastline. The Universities of Louisiana. For your future. For our future.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. For the 7th time in our 8 seasons, we are proud to welcome the president and CEO of the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, batting leadoff, Stephen Waguespack. My friend, welcome back.
Man, glad to be here. Every time, beautiful new set. It's a privilege to be here.
Well, I'm glad you are. You play a critically important role in our state's economy, in the life of business in our state, and so it's always good to catch up with you first. But we always start with a general update on the association. Tell us what's going on at LABI.
Things are going great at LABI. Obviously it's been a challenging year for business, challenging year for us, but sometimes in those tough times, that's when you can actually do some of your best work and working with your members. And so we've learned a lot the last couple of years on what our businesses truly need and how we can be helpful for them. We're proud of some of the things we've delivered on tort reform and tax reform and COVID-19 response. And now we're pulling back out into more of a normal operating rhythm. And so that's exciting to see. We had our big annual meeting last week, tremendous turnout, biggest crowd ever. Folks were so excited to be around their peers and network again. So that was exciting to see. And look, they're ready for more. Now that they're back in, they want to get back in. They're looking ahead to elections. I mean, people are excited and looking forward to what's next so they can get back to some version of normalcy.
We've got a ton to dive in here, but I think that because we took a year off for the pandemic, we haven't had a real opportunity to talk about your fabulous new downtown office space. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's awesome. It's at 500 Main Street, downtown Baton Rouge, right across from the Capitol. When we built this literally 2.5 years ago, we wanted it to be the hangout house for business. In high school, every friend had that one hangout house where you'd go and they had cool cable and a good pantry and all that stuff. Well, we got that now, and it's downtown Baton Rouge, and it's a beautiful modern office space. It's meant for big events, for training, for seminars, for businesses from across the state to just stop in for a good cup of coffee and some Wi-Fi and some meeting space. And so we're starting to get a lot of usage from it, and folks are excited about it. Businesses are using it a lot. The elected officials have gotten quite used to using it a good bit. And so it's become a gathering place. And so, we encourage our members, our LABI members all across the state, if you find yourself in Baton Rouge for an hour or a week, come squat over at our headquarters. You can get a lot of good business done. You can learn a lot from some of your colleagues or elected officials around the state. You can also just have a good time there. We try to keep it fun and loose, and it's been awesome.
Well, you've got a great staff, and it truly, that new facility truly has become the Louisiana Center for Free Enterprise. And I know you guys tag it that way, and it's critically important. You mentioned your annual meeting, and that's always a huge business event in Louisiana every year. And this year was, I think, pretty successful as well. Also saw you guys have a big presence at the Washington Mardi Gras, and Coach Brian Kelly come and speak to the group there. So tell us about both of those events, but more importantly, tell us about how important they are to driving your message forward.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The DC Mardi Gras this year, there was a lot of discussion whether it's going to happen or not because of coming out of the pandemic, not just because of what's going on nationally, but in DC there were some tough rules on gathering crowds, but they did do the DC Mardi Gras. And this year, the chairman of the Mardi Gras was Congressman Garrett Graves, as you know, Garrett, longtime friend. And he asked us to run what's called the Economic Development Lunch this year, that Friday lunch. And in working with him, we developed a great vision to put together a lunch that, we had a good time. And yes, we brought in Coach Kelly, and it was awesome to hear him speak for the first time in that type of venue. But also for the first time this year, we were able to partner with our sponsors. And for the first time, we raised about $150,000 for charity for the coastal protection efforts. And so we were excited to do that. And I think that's a new tradition that will start at DC Mardi Gras for that charitable component. We came home from that and went right into our annual meeting where we brought in Sarah Thomas, who's the first female referee in the NFL history, first one to referee a Super Bowl.
Outstanding.
She came in and she had a very entertaining but also educational message on empowerment, hard work, never quitting on your dream, and she was fun, man. She was a cool event. And so, look, those two events collectively, I think it was the first time that people were getting out in crowds, getting out amongst others, and the feedback we've gotten has been from folks, hey, when's the next one? We're ready to kind of get back into a normal cycle of events that make an impact and or have an educational component.
Well, I think that ability to start to get people back together. Look, we've spent almost 2 years now in Zoom meetings and team meetings and being separated from one another. And while there's great efficiency that comes out of that virtual technology, there's really something important about business leaders gathering, being face-to-face, being able to network and tell their stories and work with one another on ideas and sort of you guys are in some sense a clearinghouse of information for all those business leaders in our state. And I think that's a critically important role you play as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And look, I think we've all learned a lot over the last 2 years. And we can't throw away all those lessons. There's still going to be the addition of the virtual component. Our workforce now has become more and more of a gig economy type workforce. I mean, people got used to working on their own schedules and having their own freedom. And so I think our business members are having to evolve and learn how to gauge that new expectation from their customers and their workforce. We're no different. And so we're trying to learn as well.
We're going to talk a lot about the upcoming legislative session. We're going to talk some also about your thoughts on Louisiana's economy, where we are, what's working, what's not working, all of that as we go along in the show today. But I want to start by, in the last minute or so we have left in this segment, talking about your legislative issues conference, because as every legislative session approaches, you go out around the state talking to chambers of commerce, talking to business groups about what to expect from the upcoming session. I don't want to necessarily get into the meat of the session, but let's talk about the issue conferences that you're going to be doing around the state.
Yeah, every year before session, we go around and we visit with local chambers, local businesses, and hear from them. What are the issues impacting you? What can we hopefully deliver solutions on from the session? We're in that process now. And I know we're time's tight for break, and I wanted to leave this. The big takeaway we're telling them is this is the time to dream big, to aspire for new high heights, because other states are doing it. There will be 2 books written on this era years from now. One, COVID, pandemic, how that all responded. The second book written will be how this is the era that the South gained market share, investment, businesses, families from places like New York and California and Illinois. People are leaving those states in droves and they're looking at the South. Right now, we're not the vacuum cleaner we should be as a state. Other states are beating us. We have to up our game quickly in order to take advantage of this growth moment.
That's what we're going to talk about when we come back from break. What does the economy look like now and where are we headed? We're visiting with Stephen Waguespack. He's the president and CEO of the Louisiana Association for Business and Industry, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
We are united in battle to defeat a microscopic enemy. Manufacturing chemicals that safeguard lives. Refining essential fuels. Delivering in a world of uncertainty. Our creative energy is the force helping to keep families, the community, and each other safe. Together, we are Shell, the rhythm of Louisiana.
Plants would not be operating if they weren't operating under the regulations to keep everybody safe and keep the environment safe.
It also goes back to the end products that our raw materials go into. Solar panels, windmills.
Reusable bottles. Primary product is acrylonitrile, which is used to make carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber in an airplane is used to make it lighter.
By reducing weight, we indirectly help the environment because it uses less fuel. And for us to make products that help reduce carbon footprint is a big deal.
So, how can I help you today? Maybe you're looking for a bigger home. Maybe you have plans to grow your business. Or maybe all your plans have just changed. For the better. Whether you're planning for the future or just looking for a bank that cares about you. If you have a goal, let's make it happen.
This is what you're looking for.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Stephen Waguespack of LABI is our guest. We just finished what turned out to be a relatively contentious redistricting session. So every 10 years, population shifts, we do a new census. The legislature is required to come back in and redraw district lines for the legislature, for the judiciary, for Congress. Your thoughts? Where do we stand? A little bit of talk during the break about whether the governor will actually sign the bill as we sit here and tape on a Wednesday morning. We don't know yet, right? LABI's perspective on that.
So every 10 years, the legislature has to redraw the lines for themselves, for Congress, state, Supreme Court, PSC, BESI, a host of entities, and they use the census numbers to do it. The census has told a story the last decade of Louisiana of population migration around in the state, not necessarily growth in from out of state, but within the state, and some population loss. And so that's kind of where we stand right now. We've gained a little bit, but not compared to other peers in the other states.
And for the benefit of our viewers who might not be familiar, legislative districts, congressional districts, judicial districts, all have to have a certain population to make sure that the state is evenly represented. So when that population moves around from district to district,
you got to redraw the lines. Now,
lines,
judiciary
right?
is an exception to that, but the others, you're correct, that is the case. So when you go into a session, it's always controversial because these folks are voting on their own lines that they're running in. So controversy comes with the very nature of the process. The other thing different this time as compared to 10 years ago, 10 years ago, there was something called pre-clearance. The Department of Justice used to require pre-clearance. So the state would go to the DOJ and get a pre-clearance on a map before they'd bring it to the legislature. So 10 years ago, there wasn't as much changes to what was proposed because, leaders pointed to the DOJ pre-clearance. Hey, look, they gave us pre-clearance. Don't mess with it too much. Pre-clearance is no longer part of the law. That's been thrown out by the court since then. So now there's no pre-clearance. So this is the first time the legislature drew maps with no pre-clearance to point to, saying, don't touch our homework. And so it was kind of a little bit of a wild, wild west in there. And so it was controversial. But now to where you're at. You have lines that I think are reflective of where the census is and where some of the movement is. I think they're appropriate lines, and they've been passed, and they're going to the governor. We do not know yet whether the governor will sign or veto any of these maps. If you're checking Vegas odds or if you're looking at your sportsbook app, the most likely to be looked at closely for a veto is probably the congressional map, is what most folks think. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Whichever one he does veto, if any, will go to the legislature for a veto override vote. The margin's tight. It could happen, it could not. And so that is the next phase. Over the next couple of weeks, you will see whether or not he vetoes any of the maps and whether or not they override it. No matter what happens there, you can expect a court case and it'll go to court. I think the congressional map as drafted, in my opinion, will withstand scrutiny, no matter how it goes through that gauntlet, for a couple reasons. One, I think they did a good job. And two, this fall, they have to have a map to run on. And if you look at what the Supreme Court did with Alabama, they said, look, we need to have an election this fall. We're going to be okay with this map. We'll keep looking at it, but we're not going to stop the election. I would expect that to happen on this front as well.
Well, it was interesting because the debate on one side was a full 33% of our population in Louisiana today is minority. Maybe 2 out of 6, 1/3, should be minority districts to give minorities an opportunity to run. Very legitimate argument in terms of population.
Yep.
On the other side of that, it proved very difficult to draw two majority minority districts and still meet the other factors in the Voting Rights Act and some of the other regulations that have to be followed. So it'll be interesting to see what the governor does there, and we'll watch that closely.
And the one other thing to keep in mind, they did not pass a map on the Supreme Court.
Right.
That did not get done. They can do that in a regular session. They can do it in a future session. They still have time to do it, and we are encouraging them to do so. The judiciary is the third branch of government, very important, especially for businesses all across the state. The Supreme Court has not been redistricted since 1997. The appellate court system, not been redistricted since 1980 census, and the appellate court system is very heavy and out of whack compared to other peers. Our lower court system has never been redistricted in Louisiana. And so at some point, they have to take a look at that, because with all that population movement over the years, some of these districts are out of whack. Some have way too many judges for what their needs are. Some are way under the amount of judges they need. And it's not fair for the access to the court system.
You know, some may wonder why redistricting is such a critically important item for business in our state. But you know, the old axiom goes that elections are important, right? And who wins elections are important. And in order to protect free enterprise in our state, in order to protect the ability of job creators to go out and do what they do, it's important that we ensure that these districts are drawn in a way that are compact and they are legitimate, and that that we can have fair and free elections in those districts. That elections are always a critical issue for the business community, and I know that's one of the reasons why you guys get involved.
Oh, huge. Back to that judiciary point you made earlier, just look at our appellate court system. We've got 53 appellate court judges. Each of those judges, their offices cost taxpayers about $500,000 a year to fund, and that's about a 10-year-old fiscal estimates, probably a little higher. Kentucky, Alabama, states roughly our size, they have like 13, 14 appellate court judges. So think about that for a second. We've got about 40 more for the roughly same size state. Illinois, a state 3 times our size, has 5 less appellate court judges than we do. So we have a very heavy system that needs to be looked at. That's why we promote, hey, we need financial transparency and accountability. We need them to redistrict to make sure we know what that is. And we need to be looking at as judges retire, and also, do we still need that court system, or can it be consolidated with others? Every dollar saved there goes back to the taxpayers and could potentially put us more in line with other states. But going back to the election cycle, we're always trying to encourage business people to consider running for office, whether it's school board, legislature, anything else. And we do boot camps to try to train them. We try to give them information on how processes work. If we can get more business-oriented people to run for office and make their voice heard and make their impact on how their government works, that's the only way you're going to get a government that's more understanding of business, more reflective of business, and runs like a business. Everyone says that, but they don't want to get involved in the process.
Well,
we need to get business people involved in the process.
Let's take a break. We come back, I want to jump into our economy, what it looks like today, and then I also want to talk just briefly in the last segment about the upcoming legislative session and what you guys expect. Awesome. We're visiting with Stephen Waguespack. He's the president and CEO of LABI, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Baton Rouge, we know how to deal with hardship. Floods, hurricanes, illnesses, they threaten our families, our livelihoods, our communities, and spirits. But we always find the energy to overcome it all, the energy to work together and help one another, the energy to pull ourselves into a brighter future. We're honored to be part of Baton Rouge. Together, we have the energy to move forward, and that's what we're going to do.
With over 50,000 students in higher education in the capital region, finding a great intern or employee shouldn't be complicated. The Baton Rouge Area Chamber is teaming up with local colleges and universities to help businesses find their next hire using Handshake, the largest early talent recruiting platform connecting employers, talent, and colleges all in one place. Learn more at brac.org/handshake.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Stephen Waguespack of LABI is our guest. We've come through a pandemic. We've come through some pretty difficult hurricanes all across South Louisiana. Floods, different things have taken place. What is the current state, in your view, of Louisiana's economy?
So from the numbers perspective, unemployment's in pretty decent shape. I think we're 4.8. That number can be confusing though, because essentially we have less people working today than we did almost a decade ago. We're about 130,000 workers down from where we were pre-pandemic. So that rate comes down because we have less people looking for work. We're under 2 million workers. A decade ago, we were at 2 million. So we've got some work to do to get people back into the workforce. The biggest thing we hear from companies of all shapes and sizes is workforce, job creation, getting people to come into work and be willing to kind of, just be part of that team and work long term. So I think education and workforce is rising to the top of the heap of issues we're hearing about.
Is education, and you mentioned that, and education and workforce development, the big picture, preparing individuals to participate successfully in the economy, whatever that might look like. I'm not sure we've ever focused on, organized well, or invested in education at all levels in our state like I believe we need to, so that we can demand excellence. But is that something that LABI sees going forward as one of its key drivers in terms of sort of not necessarily a complete reinvention of what we're doing, but what we've recognized over the last 50, 60 years is, struggling against poverty, struggling against kids who start school and may have never had a book read to them, that we've got some catch up to do at a baseline. Just general thoughts, Stephen, on education and where we go in Louisiana.
It's the top issue we face as a state. And if you think about the workforce gap, it's a pipeline where you have to fix the entire pipeline. And it starts with the input, which is K through 3. Right now in Louisiana, K through 3, our reading levels, less than 50% of Louisiana K through 3 students can read at grade level. Think about that for a second, less than 50%.
And the statistics, the science, the research tells us that if a young man or young woman, a child, can't read at the 3rd grade level by the time they're in the 3rd grade, they've got
they're swimming upstream.
Much, much higher possibility of ending up being a dropout, being in the criminal justice system, all of those things. I mean, that's pretty clear, right?
That's why education reform is so important. And a lot of times we get asked, why does a business group care about education reform? What's the deal? Because you can have all the great training programs on the back end of the pipeline you want. If you're not fixing the input, good luck. It's not going to work. And so you will see us a lot this session talk about education reforms as a solution to workforce problems. And so you have to take a little bit of a long-term view on this. And education reform in our mind really means that you have to provide options to all families and give all families the mobility to take advantage of those options. It can't just be for wealthy families who have the ability to go to a private school. You have to do what it takes to make sure that poor and underserved families have the mobility to put their kid in the best chance for success. That's important in a regular year. It's even more so important after the last 2 years where many of those kids were sent home or they were in a masked environment where they're having trouble communicating with their teacher. If they were sent home, they may or not had the laptop or the broadband or the technology or the mentor sitting over their shoulder they need. So we really have to focus on education to make sure we can get that pipeline to workforce working.
Well, and it will be interesting to see how the pandemic effect plays out over time as kids who are in the second, third, and fourth grade now go through their high school years. You know, unfortunately, I saw a few months ago that after a few years of our average ACT scores improving in our state, we've seen a couple of years of them going in the wrong direction. And I know that there are really smart and good people working on this at the State Department of Education, business community. I mean, it really does have to be a real group effort to get this right.
And what we're saying aligns very well with what Bessie and Superintendent Brumley are saying. Everyone's on the right message. The question is whether we're going to attack this like an Apollo mission type effort and put all of our mojo into getting it done right.
Well, and you know what I've said all along is that there is so much that occurs naturally here that could make this state hard to compete with from a jobs and a quality of life standpoint. If we can ever get that act together and we can make that group effort and really raise our standards and lift what we expect in our state, I think we can do well. We got 2 minutes left. I want to talk about the upcoming legislative session. Always a critically important part of what LABI does. Looking out for the business community. There are some things that you will play defense against and some things you might be playing offense to promote. Give us a quick overview.
So other states in the South, right now, what they're trying to do is make their tax code more competitive to draw jobs and investment from other states. Mississippi, trying to eliminate their income tax. South Carolina, trying to eliminate their income tax. Arizona, not in the South, but it's growth state, trying to do the same thing. You're seeing that around the state. And so from our mind, it's not a fiscal session. It's hard for us to do a lot of that. We made some of that progress last year. We're going to focus on education and workforce this year. One point I want to put on your radar is something called education savings accounts. This would allow for families that are stuck in low performing schools, or let's say families that have either a special needs child or some other special characteristic, can use some of the dollars that the state's already spending on them in a more creative way that works for their family. This is becoming a new topic that states are looking at around the country. We think it's important for Louisiana to start to embrace it. If you can give every family mobility to make the decision that's best for their child, it's not just going to improve outcomes for that one family. I think that competitive market pressure that will ripple effect through education will raise the level of performance for every provider because they know they do a good job, they can attract more families. They do a poor job, those families can walk. And I think that type of market-driven response in education can only lift, rising tide lift all those boats.
20 seconds, your message to the Louisiana's business community.
View this moment as a growth moment, not just a let's get back to normal moment. Other states in the South are doing that. If we do that, we can be a vacuum cleaner just like these other states, get jobs and investment from the East Coast and the West Coast, but we have to have that type of mentality we have after storms where we come back bigger and better and stronger than ever. This is a storm response. And it's time we channel that inner angst and go out and kind of compete with other states and grab market share.
Listen, brother, thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Keep up the fight. We'll have you back on sometime soon to talk about where we are as we go through the rest of the year.
8 years strong. Look at you, man. This is awesome.
Pretty good stuff. That's a wrap, guys. I want to say a special thank you to the folks at Launch Media, a great team that have prepared us for another great season. John Jackson and the whole crew, what great work they do. I'm really grateful for everything that they've done to get us to this point for a new season of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.